Yes, honey, sing some True Colors for us.
No, I'm not going to
Come
do that.
on. That song is so beautiful and so classic.
It is. Well, look who we have with us,
Oh
Roma.
my goodness! Look who's welcome to the Pride main stage. Oh, it's some of our dear friends.
It's Landa Lakes, Heklina, Peaches Christ, and Mad Dog.
Oh, look how gorgeous everybody looks. Oh my gosh, Heklina looks like she's like the talking head, like the
Lady Gaga.
looks like Lady Gaga in charge of all
She's
the
the head of
So
the
are we gonna be able to
gorgeous.
hear what everyone's saying?
Hi, everybody.
Nope.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
We can't hear you. This is gonna be a really short conversation.
Well, you know, the reason that we're here is to talk about generations of drag.
Absolutely.
And we are here with some of San Francisco's most legendary queens.
Oh, hands down.
And King.
Yes, we sure are.
I see you.
So this is an unusual experience. I know that all of you have been on the main stage at San Francisco Pride before, but not quite like this. So I want to know, Peaches Christ, how are you dealing with everything going on in the COVID world right now?
Well, I guess like everyone else, I've become really good at beaming out from home and Zooming, and I guess I'm dealing with it okay. I actually traveled for the first time. I just got back into San Francisco, so that was a little stressful. We flew to Maryland to visit my mother, and to participate in some Black Lives Matter protests in D.C. And I have to say it was worth it, but it is stressful traveling right now.
I know you had an incident on the plane. Well, a near incident, didn't you? Wasn't there someone who refused to wear a mask?
Yes, it was really dramatic, and I thought maybe the people on the plane. I felt like we were all gonna maybe group attack this person, and I was kind of getting excited, but it didn't happen.
Was it like one of your horror films?
Yes.
Come to life.
There you go, right? That's a great plot for the next Peaches Christ production.
Well, I'm really interested in hearing how all of you got your start in drag. Maybe we can start with Landa. Hi, Landa.
Well, I got my start in drag actually back in Oklahoma, back in the 80s. And I used drag primarily to get into clubs when I was underage, doing classy things. The irony is that I've never drank, so I wasn't getting in there to drink. I was just getting in there to be with the whole crowd. And I guess, some people have drag mothers, and I did not have any drag mother. I had drag sisters. I had two of my best friends, and we did a lot of, how should I say, gender play early on before we actually started performing.
I have to ask, Heklina, how did you go from being in the Navy to running around in women's clothing? Please tell us what happened.
Well, there's a lot in between there. There's a lot of drugs, and there's a lot of nightclubbing in the 80s, and there's crash landing in Iceland. And I was dabbling in drag there a little bit. I actually was instrumental in starting the first drag cabaret club in Reykjavik called Moulin Rouge. And then I moved to San Francisco, and I fell in with, all of the performing people. And I started doing theater, drag theater. And within theater, I began dabbling in drag parts. Then I was also working at the Stud at the same time. I began working at the Stud in coat check, and then I worked as a security. Then I worked as a bar back, and then a bartender. And then they asked me to do something with this Dead Tuesday night slot they had, which while I worked there, they had like 5 or 6 things just come in and flop. And I was like, well, I'll try it. And I didn't think it would last more than the other clubs did. And of course, we all know what happened. And so I was still at that point one of those drag queens who does drag. I was one of those gay guys who does drag, for Halloween or whatever, like not a whole lot. And people were showing up to the Stud acting like they're acting like it's the real deal. So I was like, I better learn how to do this, shut up, Peaches. And here I am.
There's still time.
Yeah, I knew.
Well, I mean, we we can't just brush over Tranny Shack like that. I mean, it was an iconic, decades-long success story that is synonymous with San Francisco and beyond. What was that experience like for you?
Mm. Well, people ask me that all the time, but I don't remember any of it. I remember vaguely like every Tuesday night, because the thing about running a nightclub back then was, as soon as the show was over and you woke up the next day, you had to immediately start getting the next one ready. So there was never any time to really reflect on stuff. I remember there was a lot of amazing people involved. I worked with so many amazing people, and so many amazing nights happened there. And uh, I could not have done it anywhere else but the Stud. So I'll always be grateful for that, because they let anything happen there. So like, we were blowing things up and pulling things out of our butts, and live animals on stage, explosions, just like crazy. And any other bar run by sane people would have been like, get the hell out of here. But the Stud gave us free reign to do all of that. So it became this legendary thing that did kind of personify drag, West Coast drag, for a long time. So I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, it
But here I
absolutely
am.
is.
I'm not in San
Um,
Francisco right now. I'm in
the
Palm
theme this
Springs.
year is really, it's generations of hope, but it's all about intersectionality and diversity. And I know that that's something that many of us have worked on in our own shows. Peaches, do you want to talk about how that has played a role in some of the shows that you've been producing and your work with queens of different backgrounds?
Sure. I think, yeah, I mean, I got my start in drag in San Francisco at Tranny Shack, and had this offshoot that really I think was part of that umbrella of the same scene called Midnight Mass, which was a midnight movie series. And as we grew over the years, at first it was just a small group of friends who were kind of doing stupid stuff before movies. And, I didn't take it very seriously. And I certainly didn't think it would turn into something that became a career. But after many years, when it started to become something that people in San Francisco counted on and appreciated, and they took seriously, I realized I had a responsibility as far as being a producer, especially a white producer who's male, cis male in drag, to always include, and this was really part of Tranny Shack, a diverse lineup on stage, and from the very beginning, we included, people of all genders and gender identities. Back then, we didn't even have the same words that we are using now. But certainly, trans women and non-binary folks and cis women were always included as part of our drag scene. And in fact, so much so that I thought it was weird when I went other places, and they thought we were weird. Um, and I'll say that the other thing that has been tricky in San Francisco is being sure that you don't put up a show with an all white cast, because it can be very easy to do that here in the gay community. And it's done, more often than it should be. And I'll say that one time I did a show, it was a Wizard of Oz show at the Castro. And I was mortified afterwards when someone had mentioned that the entire cast was white. I was embarrassed and felt like that could never happen again. It was up to me to make sure that that never happened again. And since then, we don't talk about it very much, but behind the scenes, I think producers have an obligation to be sure that their shows are diverse and inclusive of a variety of people, because it's too easy, for it not to be, sadly, still in this scene.
I've been really lucky to be the co-host of the San Francisco Drag King contest for probably, Heklina and I, we did Folsom Street Fair together for 15 years. They even gave us a key to the fair. Remember, Heklina, we both decided to bow out at the same year.
That was a big surprise, because remember, we didn't want to go to that dinner, and then they're like, please come to the dinner. And they surprised us with those plaques there, yes. But many,
was
many
great.
years.
It was
Yes.
great. But working in the drag king community, I have to say there is a lot of diversity in the drag king community. I was one of my favorite groups has always been Mama's Boys, Alex Ewan and that group. I mean, I turn into a screaming 13-year-old groupie whenever they're on stage. I love them. So I'd love to hear from Mad Dog. You look fucking sexy. Can I say effing on here?
Well, you did. You
You
did.
look fucking sexy right today. Tell us a little bit about the drag king community and what's going on.
Well, the drag king community, it it's come a long way since I've joined the scene in San Francisco. I started out drag in 2006 down here in San Jose, and it was a dare, and someone dared me to do it and enter this contest, and I won, and I was like, hey, this is pretty easy to do, so let me go ahead and do this, But coming to San Francisco and doing drag was a whole different scene, and I have to give props to Cookie Dough because Cookie gave me my first like on the main stage to do numbers and stuff. And I was grateful that I got to perform with the last two tranny shacks with the DNA, and one of them was in Landa's number, and one of them was in Doe's number. So being a drag king in the San Francisco community, even in just drag period, a lot of people don't even know what drag kings are, which is really sad. But I think we're educating a lot of people on what drag kings are, and we come in all different forms, shapes, sizes, and all this and that. But I'm just proud to be a part of something that is getting recognized today as for drag kings. So I'm just happy to be a part of that.
Well, I have to say, you make it look easy. Yeah, I find acting like a dude very difficult. In fact, I don't think I've ever successfully done it. So,
You look like one
congratulations.
right now. You look like one right now.
Landa,
though.
you're also a hero. You open Pride every year with Bates. Let's talk about your community and the things that you do.
Well, my community is primarily the indigenous community. That's who, outside of drag, that's who I'm with, and sometimes even inside drag, that's who I'm with. I started a group out here called the Brush Arbor Girls back in 2004, and it's a Native American drag troupe, and we started doing shows. And this was all around the time that actually I started performing at Tranny Shack, and I won the infamous Tranny Shack. It's no longer named that. It's no longer a club. Don't get upset. But that's what it was back then. And maybe Heklina can explain the change of the name later on. But anyway, I was performing there, so it really helped the Brush Arbor Girls to succeed in our fundraising efforts because I've always been involved in raising funds and especially for the indigenous community. And the funny thing about San Francisco is that a lot of times that's sort of where indigenous people end up. We end up only doing prayers for different groups. They'll think, let's include Native people, and they'll say, oh, well, if we're going to include Native people, let's get a prayer. And I think prayer is important, but I don't think that that's all that indigenous people are. We're not just prayer people. We are actually we may be spiritual, but we have much more diversity than that. And I always found that really sad. I think that's one of the reasons why I started the Weaving Spirits Festival this last year is because I wanted to have a place that Native people could come and perform and not necessarily be what you call teachers of culture, but rather be able to give them a platform just to perform and not have to explain or teach. When you think about art is one of those things where explaining it is just too much. And so I was really happy that we got to start something specifically for the indigenous community. And like I said, that's always been my focus.
I would really like to know who were your drag idols when you were coming up in the drag scene or before you even knew you were going to be a drag queen. Who are you looking at for inspiration?
Okay, so my biggest drag idol was a performer back in Oklahoma. There was an underage club, and it was called the Rec Room. And in the Rec Room, Patty Melt was the top queen. And what I loved about Patty Melt was she wasn't just like by herself. It was her and the Melt sisters. There was like Tuna Melt, and then there's another queen along with them. And I just love that. I love the campy quality of it. Even though in Oklahoma, a lot of the scene was primarily like pageanty and glamour. I just fell in love with camp queens, and so I would say that that would probably be my biggest idol was Patty Mel.
Peaches, how about you?
Don't embarrass me, Peaches. I know about what an influence I was on you
Yeah,
growing up.
right.
Please,
Yeah,
but please
right.
don't talk about it right this moment in front
Okay.
of all
So,
of these
so
people.
excluding Roma, I was first really made aware of drag through John Waters' films and Divine. And so Divine, as well as Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, were really my introduction to drag. And then through my obsession with Divine and John Waters, I found out about the Coquettes, and of course learned about San Francisco and Hibiscus and Sylvester and Ruby, and then Doris Fish and the Vegas and Space Crew. And so I kind of follow. It was really Divine that kind of opened the doors to all these other amazing queens. Eventually leading up to Sister Roma, who became the most amazing queen I'd ever seen in my life, really.
Wow, thank you for throwing me a bone, really. I
Yeah, you're
appreciate it.
welcome.
How about you, Heklina?
Well, I'm just trying to get over what Peaches just said. But yes, well, she certainly borrowed some makeup tips. I'll say that. But okay, so I do agree with Peaches about John Waters and cult films. I was also very influenced by rock and roll stars like David Bowie. I loved strong women that I saw. Susie Sue, Elizabeth Taylor, people like that. And I was also really enamored with the New York drag scene in the mid '90s. People like Lady Bunny or Mistress Formica or Varla Jean Merman, all those people, Jackie Beat, because they were people who were doing it and they seemed to have a really strong sense of business and work ethic. And I went to Bianca Del Rio's birthday party last night, and talk about work ethic. That house is just so incredible. I came back to my house and I was like, I had house like envy, you know what I mean? But she has, so it's a work ethic, and I've tried to always impart that too with what I do. So strong people, I guess.
You have a beautiful home in Palm Springs, Heklina. You had to pick my jaw up off the ground when I saw it. It's very lovely. You should be very proud of it, for real.
Thank
I
you,
want to know
thank
who
you.
your influences were, honey.
That's a good question. I feel like for me, I really got to see people like Glamour and Suppository Spelling and be inspired by them through shows like Tranny Shack and other shows that were happening in Soma. I think that they were probably the two most inspirational people to me as drag queens. Obviously, I think that there's a lot of other performers that I look up to who are not necessarily drag queens or who are, like Beyonce. I do think that she is. Sasha Fierce is a drag queen. A lot of people also look up to Lady Gaga, and I also believe she's a drag queen. But I think for me, in terms of drag queens who I got to see in person who have really inspired me to keep performing and who just, I think, helped me to completely sort of transcend space and time when I watch them are people like Glamour and Suppository Spelling.
Absolutely. I mean, they can make you cry and laugh like back to back. It's insane. My favorite drag queen is Bugs Bunny. I absolutely, it's my favorite drag of all time. But my story is more like Landa's. The first person that I ever saw in drag was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a tiny little bar with no windows called the Carousel. And there was a 450-pound black drag queen named Odessa Brown, honey. And she got up on that stage and she performed to And I'm Telling You, I'm Not Going from Dreamgirls. I had never seen anything like it in my life. I was underage in this bar. I was just screaming, crying, throwing money. She was pounding on the floor. It literally changed my life. I had to go out and get the soundtrack, I had to go see I've seen the show 3 times. Like, I swear to God, she just influenced my life in such a way I'll never forget.
That's so
You were
sweet.
underage?
I want to know what it's like for you, Mad Dog. Who did you look up to? How did you shape your character? Who are your inspirations?
Well, when I first started doing that, I didn't really know much. I didn't really do my history because, again, like I said, I didn't really know there were other drag kings around. But coming to the scene in San Francisco, of course, people like Pro, Budgie Fatah, Kid to pot. Kid to pot is my absolute idol. When I grow up, I want to be just like Kid. Kid's amazing. And as I've gotten older and gotten to know a lot more people like Moby Dick is a great inspiration to me. I mean, there's so many of us out there. It just took me a little bit of time to learn a bit of the history of how drag kings became. And it's like we've got some amazing kings out there that have been doing this for 20, 25 years.
That's great. I would like to hear what you think about the future of drag in San Francisco and beyond. What do you see, Peaches, coming? You've always been a visionary. You've been a motivator, a creator. What's next?
Well, I feel like we're at this place of total transition where nothing's ever really going to be the same, and I'm excited about that. I think that's a really good thing. I feel like things are really kind of being toppled and burnt to the ground and sort of destroyed, and I'm hopeful that when we get on the other side of this, that maybe there's some room again for young, creative, artistic, queer people to flock to the city and be able to afford apartments and live here and move here. And I'm kind of looking forward to those people, when we get on the other side of this mess and we elect a new president, to really kind of invent something new and take us in a new direction. Clearly, diversity is going to reign supreme. And I think, destroying capitalism and getting rid of the sort of control that corporations have over queer culture is going to be, an exciting new way to enjoy drag.
That sounds good to me.
What about the future of queer spaces? What is that going to be like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, Heklina, the things that you've created are really impressive. And Golden Girls, for example, that phenomena that you've created doing those shows are legendary.
And opening Oasis and things like that.
Yeah, Oasis, where do you see, that's a great question. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to meet after this is over?
Well, I'll piggyback a little bit on what Peaches just said. What's really important is I've always thought that San Francisco needed a massive earthquake to get rid of all of these to scare the tech people away and get rents back down. I mean, it was so important to me as a young person when I moved to San Francisco that I could work a crappy job and I was still able to pay for a room somewhere and go out and enjoy nightlife. And nightlife inspired me. It was so creative. And I feel like that has been drained away over the past few years. And audiences have changed. Anyway, I do hope that we can get through this. One great thing about a really trying time that we're going through right now is there will be a lot of artistic responses to it. And yes, and even if we do get Donald Trump out of office, which I think we will, let's remember he did not invent racism. He did not invent all these things. We still have to continue to look at these things. We have to head on and really going to deal with them. And but I'm getting beyond myself. So queer spaces, super important. I think all the people who would have gone out for Pride and spent money, if they can take some of that money and send it to the Stud Collective, send it to Oasis, send it to Jolene's, all these places. If you really, really are serious about helping San Francisco nightlife, support the spaces that are there and that you want to have there when all this is over. Because if something can't last forever, it won't. Eventually this will go away and we will be able to gather in clubs again. But what is the club scene going to look like if we don't support it, So
you did remind me of another thing that I'm really impressed about the way that the drag and nightlife community has come together, and that is to create the SF Queer Nightlife Fund, which is something that you can also support. So thank you for bringing that up. I was worried that we didn't know what we were going to talk about, and this segment was just going to drag. I mean, I know you personally, so I know you're not the greatest conversationalist.
She thought she was going to run out of things to say. I know, it's hard to believe.
But we're getting the red flag. We're running out of time. I love you all so much.
That was such a perfect note to end on. Thank you all for being here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and experiences. We love you so much.
Thank you so
Happy
much.
Pride. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
That was fun.